I have a great guest for you guys, Andy Z. He's co-initiator of Refuse Fascism. He's also part of the National Revolution Tour.
That's correct.
And we're gonna talk about that. And spokesperson for Revolution Books NYC. So Andy has been on the show before. We've even disagreed on times because he is to the left of me. So that's a fascinating conversation. And we're gonna talk about the current state of fascism in America in a second. But you guys have been protesting it for quite some time. And what happened with LAPD in your group?
Okay, well, in early fall 2017, Refuse Fascism called for a protest that would begin, it'd be day after day, night after night, such as had been done in the Arab Spring and recently in Puerto Rico and in Hong Kong. And in Los Angeles, 9 people took to the freeway during rush hour, blocked at the 101 and said the Trump-Pence regime must go. They were arrested, they came back a month later, did it again. And then it turned out that, and at the same time, I say that later that spring at UCLA, the students disrupted Mnuchin when he came. So in the course of the trials of these, but there were no charges filed for a year. Then they came in with 57 charges, including conspiracy, right at the deadline of this. And in the pre-trial discovery, is my understanding, it became evident that there was a police informant sent in by the LAPD to Refuse Fascism meetings who played an active role and wrote these reports. There was absolutely nothing in them because everything we've scheduled, everything we've called for has been nonviolent. There were, and this is a right to the necessity for speech that to actually call the alarm to this. So that's what's actually happened with this. So
I don't know if you were in those meetings, because when you found out who the informant was, were you like, oh, dude, it's Bob?
Well, I'm from New York, and I'm also in the national editorial board and leadership. And so I wasn't at those meetings, but if it was Bob, I would have definitely had a word with him. But but the point is that that this is not a surprise, and there's sort of 2 points to make about it. One, why have they consistently gone after Refuse Fascism? What is it about an organization who says the Trump-Pence regime must go and says in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America? It's that we are identifying what is a key political question in this country that every other question now is concentrated within, in terms of any movement for social justice, whether it's abortion rights, the rights of immigrants, climate, for God's sake, the question of war. All of that gets now exacerbated with the Trump-Pence regime, and at the same time, this is a Democratic administration or Democratic DA who continues to file these charges. We want a mistrial.
Oh, in LA, yes.
In LA, yeah. And now they're retrying them again in October, and the UCLA protests are going to trial on Friday.
So you want much larger protests. We're gonna get to that in 1 second. Yeah. But last thing on this, look, as I see the banner on the highway there, look, it takes a lot of courage to walk across that highway if you've ever been there. But it could be a little dangerous. The cars are heading there. Well, in LA, usually not that fast because of how clogged the highways are, but could be. Can you see why they might be concerned about that?
First off, that was very well planned. And yeah, these people are heroes. They went out and they risked something. Could somebody have been run over? Yes. But since they did that, how many have died in the camps on the borders? How many children have been separated from their parents? If you look at, there come times in history when you actually face a danger. It's existential, not just for yourself, but for humanity. And one of the biggest problems we have now is that people didn't go out when we called them to come out last November. They didn't go out then. And what has happened? They hoped that the Democrats would take care of it. What have they done? They've prevaricated, they've wasted time, and they've never actually focused on what the actual problem is. Not one candidate will say the F word, that it's fascist. This is a fascist regime. They haven't consolidated fascism fully yet, but they've made a tremendous amount of progress in the time. So sure, they did risk something right then, but what are you going to do? We don't command the airways. Thank you. I've been on the second time here. I've been on John's show a couple of times, and that's good. But this, It's very hard to get the actual situation talked about. Endless hours talking about this candidate and that candidate and never about the substances. How did they do? How did they look?
So let's talk about your ideal world, Andy. What would you have people do that isn't candidate this or candidate that?
Okay, we are this weekend, it's actually why I'm in LA now. We are having meetings around the country. We had the first one in Washington, D.C. on Sunday after the We the People March on Saturday. And we are now calling for, starting October 19th in New York and LA, and then every weekend for the next 4 weeks, to try to kick off the kind of struggle that went on in Puerto Rico, where their governor was driven from power, as what's going on in Hong Kong. The interests of the people to be rid of a fascist regime, and then to go on with, we have very different opinions. Some, like yourself, believe that the system can be used for justice. I believe that it can't be, that when you look at everything that's gone on, from the climate to this and that, to the oppression of black people, immigrants and all this, that the roots of that are in the system itself, and we need a revolution. As you mentioned, I'm working on that with others. But right now, everybody from different persuasions could be united around a single demand: the Trump-Pence regime must go. And we have to have the same kind of spirit, determination, creativity that they have right now in Hong Kong.
Andy, one argument is, well, look, Nancy Pelosi announced impeachment yesterday, kind of, but mostly. And if you do impeachment, well, Trump goes if it succeeds. So is that acceptable to you, or what's your take on it?
Well, I think Trump should go. Of course he should go. But the reality is that it's, first off, not that likely that he will go through this process if there isn't an upsurge from below. If there isn't that upsurge from below, this could open up a lot of room for struggle. But as I think you pointed out in a tweet earlier today, that she only wants to prosecute this on the basis of corruption. That's the least of the matter here, and in fact, he's going to wage the struggle over, well, his base would prefer his corruption, which is straight out there, straight up gangsta, to the kind of more slick and covered over corruption that you see as everyday life in Washington, D.C. That's not the interest of the people in that. The interest of the people has to do, and this impeachment should be on what he's actually done, the lives that are lost, the lives that are potentially going to be lost from this regime. So I think the only way to get any positive result from this is for people to be in the streets and fight for what they want. And we're doing this in a way that if we succeed and this has to get way beyond refuse fascism, even as I think a lot of people should get into refuse fascism. It's got to get way beyond that, so that people with all different points of view, supporting different candidates, they're out, all of whom recognize that nothing good's going to come without that. Plus, many people point to, we could end up with Mike Pence. But how you actually get a dynamic going so that it is Nixon and Agnew, for those who don't remember, they were president and vice president, both gone. How you get Trump and Pence and this whole regime, and also neutralize to a great extent this huge fascist base who are relishing this battle. They're relishing it. You've got to mobilize this side of the equation, the people whose interests lie here.
Yeah. So look, constantly the Democrats are only looking out for their own interests. Part of the reason why Nancy Pelosi only wants to focus on impeachment is because, on Ukraine, and keep it a narrow focus on impeachment on just that issue, is because it affects Joe Biden. And so she, in an effort to protect Joe Biden and make it about poor Democrats, and he targeted us, etc. Now, he did break the law on that issue. She is right about that. But I don't know why she doesn't want to go into his business interests, why she doesn't want to go into the other things that people have been talking about. It is weird. It is, as the reference that Andy made is to, I said it's an inexplicable complicity in not wanting to investigate any further. So I understand all the points you're making there. Now, in terms of bringing in more people, your refuse fascism, well, an organization that's in the news a lot lately is anti-fascism, Antifa. So have you guys ever talked old school meeting new school, and what's your point of view on that?
Well, one thing is, I think that there's been a lot of attacks on Antifa. And we put out a statement a couple years ago. I mean, we were accused of I was accused of leading Antifa. That's just hardly the truth, and they would certainly tell you that. That's not the case. But I think it's a very dangerous and a very bad thing when people start targeting good protesters, bad protesters. I don't believe that the way to stop this regime is by simply mixing it up with these fascists when they come to town. On the other hand, some of them came to defend the bookstore. Has twice has been attacked by these fascist thugs. But we have to go at that. The only difference I might have with you on your tweet was the inexplicable. I think there is an explanation for why Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to do this and why she hasn't wanted to do it overall. I mean, I don't know, I'm not inside her mind, but one thing is that the Democratic Party is a ruling party in this country. And there's three things they're afraid of. One, she's afraid of Donald Trump. But now she's invited, he's gonna come at her, and you have to go back to that. Two, there's the base of Donald Trump. And they are really active. I've been to all the right-wing sites this morning to see what they're saying. They're relishing this. And the other thing she's afraid of, and this is where the protest in the street really matters. She's afraid of mobilizing the people who the Democratic Party represents, the Black, Latino, women, white people of conscience, youth, people concerned about the environment. You get all those people out in the streets in the kind of situation you have in Hong Kong right now, there's gonna be a lot, it's gonna be wonderful because there'll be a lot of discussion, there'll be a lot of debate. Watch the movie The Square before the Tahrir Square and the Arab Spring was turned around there. And of course today, well, the good news is they've come back and they're in the streets again in Egypt. But this is where change comes from. It always comes from the people acting in their own interests.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a fair point that as much as Trump and the Republican leadership does not want a popular uprising, I'm not at all convinced Democratic leadership would like that either.
They don't want it, that's my point. They don't want that, that's why she won't do it this way. That's why she stalls, that's why they can't even say the word for real for so long. And they still don't say the word fascism.
Right, all right, the website is refusefascism.org. Andy Z, thank you for coming in again, appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, good to see you again, Jay.
All right.